Hello and welcome to the Business Today show. I'm Udayan Mukherjee. They say India will be the third largest stock market in the world by the turn of the decade. That will be quite an achievement. And these days, there are all kinds of foreign institutions crawling all over the place, from FIIs to private equity investors to venture capitalists to angel investors to foreign direct investors, all trying to get a piece of the action. But it wasn't always like this. In fact, back in the 80s, India was hardly an investment destination for the world. You could rarely find a foreign player in the Indian market, and there were a band of young men, young then, the likes of Hemendra Kothari, Nimish Kampani, Uday Kotak, Vallabh Bansali, who were trying to cobble up something of an investment destination for a status for India. And therefore, I'm very delighted to welcome one of the grand old men of Indian investment banking to the show today, Hemendra Kothari, who's the chairperson of the venerable house of DSP Investment Management and has actually been a very important part of the Indian investment banking scene for the last 5 decades. Mr. Kothari, it's a pleasure having you on the show and great to see you again after a long time.
Thank you, then. I'm very happy to be on the show. Ask me any questions. Otherwise, I can say that India today is doing much better than most of the countries in the world, and I'm proud to be here in India. Thank you.
I want to start with the episode with BlackRock because today you're DSP Investment Managers, but just a few years ago you were known to everybody as DSP BlackRock, and then 4 years ago they offered to buy a large part of your stake and own 76% in the company, and they even offered to make you lifetime chairman of the company, but you walked away from that and you instead bought their stake back, BlackRock stake back, and now you're fully owned DSP Investment Managers. Why did you pass up that opportunity? Why did you not sell that stake to BlackRock?
No, BlackRock has been a good partner, and Mr. Larry Fink, who still remains a good friend. I was very impressed, in fact, in the year when I sold to Merrill Lynch my majority stake, or I kept 10%. They insisted to tell me to keep 10%. And they thought I still had value to them. So a couple of years was a restriction for me to sell the shares. But when we were doing the transaction, BlackRock, Merrill Lynch had sold their business on asset management to Merrill Lynch. And with that, my 40% stake was, I had a right, of course, even that time, to buy 100% stake. But I agreed to join hands with BlackRock, which is we are talking about now somewhere in 2008, 8-9, we started the joint venture with BlackRock. After over 10 years or so, BlackRock and we had a good relationship. We continued the relationship without, they are having more directors on my company than my representative from my side. But the question which was there, BlackRock offered to buy 76% stake from me, which, well, that's their philosophy to manage the business, where my family business has started somewhere in 1866, much before the stock exchange started. And my great-grandfather was one of the pioneer on the stock, creating the stock exchange. And he was then vice president and first signatory of the stock exchange. So I think to some extent, emotional angles, and there was no logic for me to sell. And I feel India was going to grow, and we kept the shares, and I bought the shares from BlackRock.
But do you think an Indian institution today, there are these Morgan Stanleys and Templetons and Merrill Lynches all over the place. Do you think a standalone Indian institution without a foreign brand name can actually stand tall and maintain market share in such a competitive investment banking landscape today?
Well, why not? That said, that doesn't mean in future we will not be open to something, thinking differently. But at this moment, I feel, yes, we are doing it. since the last few years, and we'll continue to do that, I believe. We raise money also from international investor ourselves. Uh, Before even BlackRock came, we were a joint venture with Merrill Lynch. We learned basically the systems, etc., from Merrill Lynch those days. And then BlackRock improved on us our various aspects of our business. In spite of that, there are mistakes there. So the question is not that just because you have a joint venture partner, you will do well, but you can do it on our own selves. DSP is a well-known brand, I feel, and I believe that we can grow the business from here. It depends on getting a right quality people, uh, don't make mistakes, and give positive, good returns to the investors. That's what it matters, and have confidence of the investors that we don't do anything wrong with their money.
Right. I also want to ask you because, while you had these global partnerships, there was also this episode of the iShares ETF, which could have come into the joint fold at some point. And therefore, I want to ask you about active versus passive investing because, there is a view that maybe passive investing will grow. ETFs will grow much larger in size, which are not so large in India today. But globally, ETFs are very, very large. Do you think passive investing over time will become more popular in India than active investing, which is where bulk of the funds come in for mutual funds like DSP?
I personally feel both will thrive, uh, active and passive. People will realize that active will have to show better performance. Passive funds of various kinds will come out. People will come out with passive funds of different kinds and they can create portfolio out of that. The many people who are managing the portfolio management for the family offices, for them, they can create a portfolio of passive funds. And they can create also have an active funds, depending on what kind of fund managers they choose, what kind of specialization they require, on which sector wise, how they perform. So there are so many factors. But yes, passive funds will become more growth in future. You see the growth in passive funds. That said, people today, what's happened in past, the passive funds, the margins were too small, and today they are getting reasonable. At the same time, active funds who are charging more will have to reduce their fees. That will happen, I personally feel, and both will survive on both sides.
There's another thing happening, Mr. Kothari, which is that while mutual funds had a very large part of the equity pie, these days a lot of nimble-footed, smaller PMS schemes are being launched or AIFs are being launched, active fund management again, and because of superior performance in many cases, they seem to be getting more attention from the retail crowd. How do you see this playing out between mutual fund houses and PMS schemes?
I think both will survive. Both should do well, depending on, as I said, performance, depending on the credibility of the managers, depending on the past reputation of the managers. So I think we are seeing there are a lot of mushrooming of the wealth managers, what you call. There never used to be too many family offices in past. Only in last few years, the family offices have started, uh, and this is going to have further growth of that as people have become richer. The business people have started separating the professionally keeping the family office to choose the investment or investment fund managers. So I think these are the kind of things which are going to happen now.
Speaking of family offices, Mr. Kothari, you're an old hand at the investment game. Tell us a little bit about your own investing style because I see that the publicly disclosed documents say that you have significant holdings in companies like, say, alkyl amines. Is that a sector like specialty chemicals which you are very fond of personally or see a lot of
Uh,
potential in?
Alkalamani is my brother, who is the major shareholder and the promoter. I was helping him, assisting him in he's a chemical engineer, and since the beginning, he wanted to be in the industry. And today also he has majority stake in Alcala Mines. I was initially we were holding shares, that is myself and my side of the family, that is my uh, family, my daughters and myself. And we in 1992 we decided in half an hour's time what we want to do. He wanted to be in the industry. I wanted to remain in finance. So this is a long-term history. I was a chairman for many years and a director till only a few years back. So my friendship and I would say my relationship with my brother has remained very close, and he is in the chemical, not myself. I am not in the chemical industry or understand the chemical side of the business.
Hmm. But what about East India Hotels then? I mean, that's something that you personally would have picked, and
It
you've
is
been a holder for many years.
no, it is a small stake. It's not much stake. So that is a mistake on your part. I don't think I have more than even 1% stake there. So that's not true. Yes, I knew Mr. Oberoi from many years, since 1984 or 83, 84, and has been a good friend, though he's very old now. But he has a lot of liking for that, his family and his son and everybody. So apart from that, there is nothing in particular.
Okay. Uh, you spoke about Larry Fink in passing. I want to ask you about him a little bit and your relationship with him, because knew Larry before he became the Larry Fink, right? I mean, give us some anecdotes of your interactions with him and how the experience and the relationship panned out over years.
Larry and we met for the first time, well, 13 years or so. And first meeting itself, uh, he impressed me. And that time they were just about $500 million and $500 million of Merrill Lynch took over or merged. That time uh, I met him, and the Merrill Lynch suggested, why don't you look at joint venture as we are selling stake. That's the way I met him, and I was impressed. And he remained a good friend. I could catch up anytime. I used to catch up the chairmen of Merrill Lynch. There were four chairmen in my time. They changed there, and I had the request where I could call up and talk to them over the phone if I had any questions on that. So the same relationship I had with BlackRock and its various senior colleagues, and I still have a few friends there in BlackRock. So that's the relationship point of view. If I wanted some guidance, I used to take that. So that's the way it is.
Speaking of relationships, Mr. Kothari, I mean, what was your equation with your peers who I mentioned at the start of the show? Because, at the time that you were building DSP, Nimish Kampani was building JM, Vallabh Bansali was with Enam, Uday Kotak, before the bank came about, was building the house of Kotak, Kotak Mahindra Finance. What was your equation with your peers? Was it fierce competition, or did you have some kind of fondness, even affection, respect for each other?
Uh, there is, of course, a competition. There is, of course, business we wanted it, and by and large, we got it. It's not that. Uh, we were, over that time, earlier, Nimish Kumpani was there, then they came up. We have a healthy relationship with all of them, including Vallabh Bansali. So the competition and relationship were two different things there. It was uh, depends on what the client wanted was the first focus for us. And well, we competed fairly and squarely, and everybody's strength were used for the getting business and also at the same time servicing your clients. Our strength was international distribution.
Hmm.
Our strength was looking in India and institutional investors. And Vallabh Bansali's strength that particular time was more retail oriented on the point of view. So that was the thing at that time. Nimesh was, of course, strong in merger and acquisition side, which we were also quite strong. Uday also came later and he improved on all sides of the business. His strength was he was ambitious. He wanted to be a bank and he got what he wanted.
Who do you have the greatest respect for, Mr. Kothari, of all this few peers that you spoke about? Who do you think, in your eyes, has actually gone on to achieve uh, more than what the early promise may have been? I mean, who would you
I,
reserve the greatest respect
I,
and
I,
admiration for?
I respect or disrespect. I don't no respect for anybody. First of all, respect for all of them. I must say Uday has done a great job on thinking ahead of today what he is in creating the bank. Thought of it much earlier. Actually, I was offered 2007 a license, bank license. Unfortunately, I took a decision not to go for bank at that time, which I had gone. To some extent, it was a no competition clause coming in with Merrill Lynch, which I could have asked them, and maybe they would have joined on the side. But then in my family, there was unfortunate thing. My wife had passed away just a couple of years, 1 year back, and I thought I will more focus on philanthropy those days and asset management side. In fact, slowly my daughter was coming up over here, and we had a good CEO, and it would run. So I think few years my attention was on more philosophy than wanting to do business, which I did in my. I had always interest in conservation, wildlife, and from there I started understanding what is it happening in the this particularly in conservation side. Today I'm a chairman of. I started more than 20 years back, Wildlife Conservation Trust, which we are now in 23 states, helping from not only the forest guards, which we did about 2,500 anti-assisted, 2,500 anti-poaching camps, to schools of 900 schools around the forest area, etc. But the one other thing which I realized that one forest is one aspect, more than forest is the climate change happening, and we water the rivers coming out of the forest area. So from there, I started the largest conservancy in the world, the Nature Conservancy, which I happened to start knowing them in about 7, 8 years back, and I attracted them to come to India. And today I'm a chairman also on the Nature Conservancy in India board. So that's a passion, but at the same time I realize it's very important. I do health and education side. That's the other side, which is
Right.
my focus on education. So this my time goes in different things in life. You realize, and the youngsters have to do now their own work. My company is run professionally. I have a CEO and managing director, uh, Kalpin Parekh. He does that. My daughter, who is also a Harvard graduate, and Wharton and Harvard, and my younger daughter is jumping up to start something on her own. She will do that. So it's the way the life comes. Only thing which we have focused, in fact, is don't do something which is not ethical. Don't do something which is you feel that you are doing wrong, and remain on the right path.
Right. So, what's the future for DSP Investment Management, Mr. Kothari? I mean, what direction do you see it moving in? Because right now there are many avenues. Your core strength is fund management at this point in time, but there's private equity which is coming up in a big way, particularly with reference to the kind of capital raising which the new digital enterprises are doing. There is microfinance which is growing quite fast across the country. Do you want to take DSP in or lead or guide with the help of the management DSP in any of these areas, or do you want to stick to your knitting of core fund management?
We invest ourselves into private equity investments. We learning and the question of private equity is something which is long term, very long term investment. Horizon should be there, investors. Where mutual fund is an open-ended funds, most of them, and Your private equity exit is not that easy. It can be very profitable, but that's the way to be seen by the investors. Yes, we may go into private equity as a separate business in future. Maybe one of my son-in-law, who is very keen to start his renewable, is according to me is one of the expert in the basically renewable side. So he will go where his passion is. So I think we are a family office. They will take a decision in what business we want to be in future. Yes, we can be doing even lending business as we are large capital. I was surprised, but except 1 year after Merrill Lynch joined in 1995 or so, we gave one dividend, but we have never distributed dividends, nor we have borrowed money. So I think that's the way we operate, and we are conservative, and we'll remain to be conservative, little bit opening up for doing different businesses.
Well, I wish you great luck, Mr. Kothari. It's very nice to have caught up with you after so many years, and my compliments on a spectacular career that you've had, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you, then. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you.